Hey everyone, thanks for coming out. I know I always say it, but I do appreciate you listening to me. This is going to be a quick one. The Sudan. Wow. So, the point of this whole entire lecture, what do you call these things? Is that Sudan essentially, right, tried to take the UAE to the International Court of Justice. Why? Well, to be honest with you, it accused the United Arab Emirates of supporting genocide in its conflict, meaning that it's supporting paramilitaries, etc. In fact, even more recently, which is really interesting, Colombians, there's a Colombia behind me, were found to be on one of their planes to go to Sudan. So what Sudan, now you can read about how the conflict developed, the problems there, etc. But the goal here is just to get to the meat of this, is that so Sudan says, okay, you're supporting genocide. Wow, that's a big deal, right? You're supporting genocide in our country. The problem is, there's been a lot of reservations to accepting this special article for Article 9, IX. Wow, my Roman numeral is a little off, but that's perfectly fine. Article 9, which would allow states to bring other states and other parties to the International Court of Justice so they would decide whether or not someone's supporting genocide. And a lot of states found this controversial. So when you read the stuff, it's, is this a clause that's fair to all states and parties, or is it a clause that will relinquish their sovereignty of carrying out certain policies? And does the international community, through the ICJ, the International Court of Justice, have the right to judge whether or not something is genocidal? So a lot of countries, states, after World War II, and you had the whole genocide prevention, etc., right, the conventions, would not sign that specific article, would not be tethered to that article. And what a surprise, they're not. So it's really, really interesting that the Sudan, after bringing this case, right, to the International Court of Justice, right, and the UAE is not part of this. They're part of the conventions, but not that article. So it's more of a technicality, I would say, than it is an evidence-based reason why the ICJ rejected it. And it's really, really interesting when you compare this case to the Nicaraguan case, where Nicaragua took the United States to court and actually won. The ICJ did support Nicaragua's case. But this is a little different because the Sudan went in for genocide, and because UAE is not pertinent to Article 9, as a result, they refuse to support it. So it's going to be stricken from the court itself. What's the point of this? The point of this is to understand two main points. Number one, the ICJ does rule on cases. It does have a modicum amount of power. But at the same time, we still live in anarchy. There is no enforcement. So who would enforce this technicality anyways? But in addition, let's just say for the sake of argument, hypothetically, UAE is found guilty of supporting genocide in Sudan. Will it, who's going to enforce it in the first place? So this is really one of the issues here. But if you really start reading about this case, UAE has really come out saying, see, this is evidence, this is a baseless case, etc., but it's really a technicality. And the Sudan actually had a place to go in order to talk about UAE's influence in its growing civil war and supporting the RSF rebels that are in Sudan. So you got to kind of ask yourself, okay, it might not be like domestically oriented law where you can actually, send police over and they arrest people, etc. But at least the Sudan has a place to go to speak about this. And as I speak about in another case, Argentina versus Ghana, they actually did let Argentinian military ship go because of the law of the sea. So it is an interesting case. And the other thing I point that ICJ will not accept every case. And in this case, it's based on a technicality. But then you have to start arguing and looking deeper into all these cases. Then how is Sudan going to stop this civil war? I mean, it's been plunged, and if you read the articles, the supplemental articles I put in, I mean, it is an absolute disaster, and it's such a lamentable conflict. And can international organizations and international law address this kind of issue? And this is where you get into the, when you do study international law, international relations, you work for international organizations, as I did before, the European Union, the Danish government, that's a governmental organization, but also the United Nations itself and its food program. You have to ask, to what extent are they useful and to what extent aren't they? I want to thank you all for listening and about this lamentable case of Sudan's civil war that is still raging at the time of this lecture. Take care, everyone.